son died tragically just 1 month ago. Flood of women have come forward with claims that he fathered their children, that Mrs. Wilson's deceased son, Mr. Marquette Dames, is the biological father of your children.
Well, he got gunned down on July 6th, so it's really hard for me.
Yes.
All I do is cry. When they took him, they took a part of me too.
How many women?
It's 11 people. We're talking 11 kids here.
When I was pregnant, he made sure I was doing right while I was pregnant. He was there throughout the whole thing. She also knew about it. She used to come to my house. We used to play cards, you know, and hang out.
When a single courtroom becomes the place where truth refuses to stay buried, Judge Lauren Lake discovers that every DNA test has the power to expose regret, rebuild families, or shatter them forever. Inside Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, an atmosphere of pressure, grief, suspicion, and long-denied truth settles over every person present. The setting is a familiar one for viewers of cases involving paternity, child support, adoption stories, cheating stories, and questions about the relationship between law and justice. But today the intensity is multiplied. A mixture of families, former lovers, grieving parents, and young adults searching for identity stand before the court, each hopping that one piece of evidence, a DNA test, will finally tell the story that years of arguments, rumors, and broken trust could not. Judge Lauren Lake opens the day by reminding everyone that this courtroom does not deal in assumptions, social media narratives, or emotional manipulation. It deals in facts, statutes, and reality. Yet she also acknowledges that legal truth and emotional truth are not always identical, a theme that sits at the center of modern jurisprudence and frequently appears in discussions on the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, the Divorce Course podcast, and even recovery-focused platforms such as Celebrate Recovery Testimonies, where people confess how the truth changes everything. In the first set of individuals arriving, a grieving mother occupies center stage. She is the mother of a recently deceased young man. She stands firm but visibly shaken as she faces multiple women who all assert that her son fathered their children. She explains that after her son's tragic death, people regret taking certain steps too late, and she is one of them. She regrets not insisting on DNA confirmation earlier. She regrets believing that everything would eventually make sense. She regrets allowing doubt to remain unspoken. Now, in the stage in divorce-like emotional separation created by death itself, she needs closure. This is not merely a paternity fight. It is a battle for identity, survivor benefits, and emotional completion. Judge Lauren Lake guides this emotionally heavy exchange through the structure of law, reminding everyone that Social Security survivor claims and child support are rooted in legal definitions, not speculation. The grieving mother discusses how 11 women contacted her after her son's death, all claiming he fathered their children. She feels overwhelmed and heartbroken, describing how she waited weeks to bury her son so DNA could be preserved, a choice that reflects both desperation and love. Across from her, two young mothers insist with unwavering confidence that the deceased man is definitely the father of their children. They speak about relationships, shared history, and emotional connections, but Judge Lauren Lake continually returns them to the foundation of the court: evidence, not emotion. The young mothers describe involvement, support, and the presence of the man when their children were born, but the grieving mother counters with quiet but powerful knowledge. Her son confided his doubts to her before he died. She was sworn to secrecy, but today the courtroom becomes the place where secrets can no longer remain hidden. The concept of justice in jurisprudence shows its complexity here. Justice is not only about facts, it is also about giving voice to pain, acknowledging loss, and validating the experiences of people who rarely get closure anywhere else. A cousin of the deceased enters the courtroom and supports the mother's testimony. According to her, the young man also shared doubts privately with her. She stands as an important witness, reinforcing the idea that truth often exists in conversations no one else hears. Judge Lauren Lake listens, assesses credibility, and makes sure emotion does not distort legal analysis. The evidence submitted includes an obituary where the children's names were listed incorrectly. This sparks conflict, accusations, and the kind of heated exchanges that are often later discussed on podcasts that analyze adverse inference in the Evidence Act. The idea that when someone refuses to produce information, their refusal may itself be used against them. Here, however, the issue is simpler. Confusion, grief, and disagreement about what the truth was before DNA testing became necessary. Judge Lauren Lake repeatedly calls for order, reminding everyone that although the pain is real, the process must remain respectful. The moment the DNA results are announced becomes a turning point. The courtroom shifts from accusation to acceptance. As the results confirm that the deceased young man is indeed the biological father of the children in question, the grieving mother's shoulders release for the first time. She feels relief and heartbreak at the same time, the kind of emotional duality often described in long-form adoption, stories full episodes where individuals discover unexpected truths about their origins. This moment also illustrates a core idea often highlighted in legal theory. The law cannot heal emotional wounds, but it can provide clarity that makes healing possible. After the emotional conclusion of the first case, the courtroom moves to another deeply complicated family conflict. A young couple enters, struggling with broken trust, betrayal, and fear that their family might disintegrate depending on the outcome of another DNA test. Here, the emotional environment mirrors the dynamics often explored on cheating stories platforms, stories where one mistake has lifelong consequences. The woman admits she made a mistake with another man during the conception window. The man, hurt by past betrayal, confesses that he has a tracker on her phone because the doubt is so overwhelming that he cannot trust anything she says. Judge Lauren Lake insists that despite the emotional chaos, the court focuses on evidence and timeline. The couple explains how their relationship was saved temporarily because the court summoned them, but now their future depends entirely on the result. The man declares that if the child is not biologically his, he will leave permanently, despite loving the baby and having formed a bond with her. This emotional conflict reminds Judge Lauren Lake of what she often emphasizes. Love cannot replace truth, and truth cannot replace responsibility. In family law, these elements must coexist. The court listens patiently as both individuals explain their positions, fears, and hopes. The young mother admits she contacted the other man, and he denied responsibility, even encouraging her to have an abortion. Judge Lauren Lake underscores that irresponsibility from another potential father does not erase biological reality. Again, the courtroom waits for DNA, the modern tool that slices through lies, confusion, and wishful thinking. When the results reveal that the man is not the biological father, the courtroom sinks into a silence heavy with grief. The man breaks down. The mother collapses emotionally. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges the devastation, but encourages the man to think carefully before detaching from the children who already see him as a father. This case, like many described on justice-centered podcasts, raises the question of whether legal truth or emotional truth should determine family structure. And again, the theme appears. Truth changes everything, even when no one wants it to. The final major story of this segment involves a 19-year-old young woman who has lived her entire life without knowing who her real father is. When she stands before the court, she is not angry, she is exhausted. She describes the pain of listening to uncertain stories for years, of trying to form relationships without clarity, and of longing for truth. Her mother admits she was intimate with 4 men during the conception period. One man believed he was the father his entire life. Another believed he was robbed of the opportunity. The young woman simply wants stability. Judge Lauren Lake carefully handles this emotionally fragile environment, guiding all participants through clarity and accountability. When DNA reveals that neither tested man is the father, devastation sweeps through the courtroom. Yet Judge Lauren Lake assures the young woman that although these answers hurt, they are better than never knowing. Truth, even when painful, provides direction, a theme echoed often in legal education and recovery programs, where individuals finally face the consequences of long-hidden realities. As the next phase of the day unfolds inside Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the emotional weight intensifies. Everyone present seems to carry a private universe of grief, doubt, or determination. The court remains a structured environment, but beneath that order is a storm of raw human uncertainty. The viewers who watch cases like these, whether through full episodes, legal breakdowns, or podcast discussions such as the Divorce Course podcast, the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, and shows focusing on adverse inference in the Evidence Act, child support, adoption stories, and cheating stories, always return because they know this courtroom is where truth is not just revealed, but confronted. Judge Lake begins this phase with a reminder that truth does not rearrange itself to protect feelings. She states that the concept of justice in jurisprudence requires honesty even when the truth destroys illusions, relationships, or long-held assumptions. She emphasizes that the court understands pain, but emotional responses cannot change biological reality, nor can they override legal standards. The grieving mother from earlier sits quietly in the gallery, absorbing what DNA has confirmed. She now processes the reality that her late son left behind children who will grow up without him, yet she also feels relief knowing she can now form relationships with them. Her role has shifted from defender to guardian of legacy. In many ways, her journey resembles the emotional arcs described in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where acceptance of truth becomes the beginning of healing, not the end of suffering. But now a new pair approaches the bench, a relationship battered by deception, insecurity, and conflicting narratives about fidelity. This couple's presence reflects the recurring theme explored across podcasts and legal discussions: how stage and divorce dynamics can appear in couples who are not formally married but emotionally separated due to betrayal. Their story has already shaken the courtroom once, and now they return for further clarification about what comes next. Judge Lake listens attentively to the man as he describes how the DNA results shattered his understanding of fatherhood. Even though he previously stated he would walk away if the child was not his emotions reveal something different: attachment. He is torn between the legal truth and the emotional bond he has created. The mother pleads for understanding, insisting that although she made mistakes, she wants him to remain part of their children's lives. The judge evaluates both perspectives and discusses how the relationship between law and justice can sometimes lead to different outcomes. Legally, he has no obligation to stay. Emotionally, his role may still be critical to the children's well-being. This tension illustrates a recurring legal concept. The law defines obligations, but justice sometimes requires compassion. Judge Lake encourages the man not to make a decision from anger but from clarity. She reminds him that children are innocent and do not choose the circumstances of their conception. Her words echo themes often explored in adoption stories' full episodes, where biological ties are only one part of what makes a family whole. The courtroom then transitions to yet another emotionally packed case, a young adult searching for her biological father. Though the earlier DNA tests excluded two potential fathers, the court's task is not finished. The young woman stands before Judge Lake again, processing the sudden collapse of two possible answers. She admits that hearing two negative results feels like losing two versions of the truth she once believed in. Her mother sits beside her, ashamed of the confusion caused years ago, but Judge Lake focuses not on blame but on clarity moving forward. This moment allows the court to delve deeper into the structure and principles guiding modern evidence law. Judge Lake explains how, in the absence of DNA testing, the court would have had to consider circumstantial evidence, behavioral patterns, timelines, and even adverse inference if any party refused testing. But she also clarifies that biological truth exists regardless of willingness, and DNA removes guessing from the equation. The young woman listens carefully, knowing she is closer to the truth even if the path is painful. After this emotional segment, the courtroom prepares for another set of individuals with a completely different story but equally heavy stakes. This time, the case involves the intersection of paternity doubt, blended family tensions, and confusion about reproductive timelines. The couple standing before Judge Lake enters with visible strain, gripping one another not out of affection, but out of shared fear of what the results may determine. The man in this case explains that he suspects his partner cheated during the conception period. He describes moments of mistrust, discoveries that felt like betrayals, and how the fear of being misled made him hypervigilant. As he recounts monitoring her activities, tracking her location, and questioning her explanations, Judge Lake gently but firmly warns that suspicion cannot substitute for facts. The mother in the case explains that her mistake with another man was not rooted in desire, but in emotional confusion, stress, and long-standing insecurity. She expresses regret, not just because the truth may end the relationship, but because she feels she damaged the bond she wanted most. Judge Lake uses their case to illustrate how paternity uncertainty often reveals deeper issues already present. She discusses, in general terms, how the stage in divorce dynamic often begins long before legal paperwork is filed. It begins when trust breaks. The courtroom becomes not only a place of legal resolution, but a mirror reflecting the fractures that existed long before the DNA test. As this couple waits for their results, Judge Lake shares insights that resonate with many viewers. The courtroom cannot heal emotional wounds, but it can clear away confusion. The truth, once revealed, offers a foundation for whatever comes next, whether rebuilding or walking away. When the DNA test reveals that the man is not the biological father, grief floods the room. The mother collapses into tears, realizing the consequences of her actions. The man trembles, torn between love for the children and the ache of betrayal. Judge Lake reassures the couple that although biology is now clear, the emotional bonds already formed do not vanish. She emphasizes that the law does not dictate who the heart chooses, and the next decision must come from reflection, not reaction. The next case scheduled for the day shifts the emotional tone again. A mother, now older, comes to court with her adult daughter seeking clarity about past relationships. This time the case blends elements of paternity, personal history, and the long-term consequences of unclear parentage. Unlike the earlier young woman, this adult daughter has lived nearly 2 decades without certainty about who her father truly is. The mother describes her past with unexpected transparency. She lists multiple men she was intimate with during the conception window, acknowledging the confusion she unintentionally passed to her daughter. Judge Lake listens without judgment, but stresses that part of justice involves acknowledging past choices clearly. The mother explains that she was young, unsteady, and unsure of her relationships, and that truth was never fully established. The first potential father, who had believed for years that the daughter might be his, speaks about how deeply he regrets missing milestones, birthdays, and the opportunity to build a relationship. He expresses feelings that mirror what is often shared in recovery or family-focused testimonial circles. People regret taking too long to seek the truth. He wishes he had insisted earlier. The second potential father, the one who raised the daughter for years, also speaks. He explains that even though biology may prove something different, his emotional attachment remains real. Judge Lake praises him for understanding that being a parent involves more than genetics. She emphasizes that such emotional commitment reflects the core of justice in family matters, protecting the child's sense of belonging. The daughter listens, visibly shaken. Judge Lake reminds her that DNA may change the story but never changes her worth, dignity, or identity. She explains that many individuals featured in full episodes of family and adoption-related courts encounter similar identity disruptions, yet they emerge stronger because truth provides clarity that secrecy never can. When the results exclude both men, the courtroom experiences a wave of collective sadness. The mother expresses regret, the potential fathers experience heartbreak, and the daughter feels an emptiness only truth can fill. Judge Lake, however, assures them all that this is not the end but a beginning, the beginning of searching for the real biological father, the beginning of healing, and the beginning of building relationships without hidden questions. The judge also emphasizes that this is a prime example of how the relationship between law and justice can be complicated. The law has determined that neither man is the father, but justice requires ongoing effort to find the truth so the daughter gains closure. As the day progresses, the courtroom sees more parties entering, each with their own story, but all centered around the same theme: truth as the ultimate clarifier. Whether through DNA results, testimony, or the legal process, every individual standing before Judge Lake must confront the reality they sought to avoid. In every case, the courtroom shows why the truth changes everything, legally, emotionally, and spiritually. The judge's consistency, fairness, and compassion demonstrate why this courtroom functions not only as a place of law, but as a place of renewal, accountability, and understanding. As the final stretch of this intense courtroom day unfolds, Judge Lauren Lake continues guiding one devastated family after another through the complexities of identity, responsibility, and truth. Every new case arriving in the courtroom resembles the last in one way. Someone is desperate for clarity, another is terrified of what the truth will reveal, and everyone understands that once the DNA test speaks, their lives will never go back to the uncertain version of yesterday. The courtroom atmosphere has transformed over the course of the day. What began as a space filled with nervous tension has now become something heavier, a place where human vulnerability sits on full display. The court clerk, the families, the supporters, and even distant observers feel the exhaustion that comes from watching so many people confront painful truths. Yet Judge Lake remains grounded, steady, and profoundly focused on the purpose of the court, delivering justice, clarity, and closure. In the first of the final cases, a woman brings forward a long-standing dispute involving her former partner and the question of whether he is the biological father of her teenage son. She explains that the boy is now old enough to ask questions himself. He wonders why his father is sometimes distant, sometimes affectionate, and sometimes withdrawn. Judge Lake acknowledges that this emotional inconsistency often stems from unresolved doubt, the kind that infects relationships slowly until it becomes unbearable. The former partner admits that he has lived with uncertainty for years. He regrets never demanding a DNA test earlier, and he regrets allowing doubt to shape the way he treated the boy. His confession aligns with a common theme explored in cheating stories, adoption stories, and recovery-based platforms like Celebrate Recovery Testimonies, where individuals admit that people regret taking too long to confront reality. Judge Lake notes that his inconsistency does not make him evil. It makes him a man who has been afraid of the truth. She stresses that in family cases, the concept of justice in jurisprudence is not merely about legal outcomes, but about whether the parties can finally move forward without hidden resentment. The mother, standing firm, explains that she is not here for money, benefits, or personal revenge. She is here because the child deserves answers. These words echo throughout the gallery and remind everyone of the core belief that truth changes everything. When the DNA test confirms that the man is indeed the boy's biological father, relief washes over both parties. The mother feels validated. The father finally accepts the truth he avoided for years, and the courtroom sees another example of truth repairing a damaged relationship. Judge Lake praises both parents for showing up and facing the truth before their son grew into adulthood with unanswered questions. The next case introduces a situation layered with legal complexity. Two siblings, now adults, file jointly, hoping to learn whether they truly share the same father. Their mother takes the stand, visibly anxious, explaining that during the time both children were conceived, she was involved in a relationship, but also navigating unresolved emotional trauma from a previous marriage. The father listed on the birth certificates never questioned paternity during their childhood, but now, decades later, his silence on the matter disturbs the children.